I remember when I became a Christian in like 1989, that acting was still like, oh, if you acted at all, you had demons and it was a sin and, blah, blah. And I'm like, that is stupid. And number one, I know a lot of Christians that are real good actors. You know what I mean?
Too, they had rock and roll music, wasn't his daughter was listening to rock and roll. I remember that.
Yep.
Oh my word, she's gonna end up on a
she's gonna go to hell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Porn star.
So to me, this is a loss of control for him. It has nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with sending them to heaven. He's losing control. He knows he's losing control. And so he's got to stop that. So now he didn't hide the fact at all that he killed his family. And he obviously stated he knew it was wrong based on all he had been taught. Mm-hmm. So that makes me wonder, did he really think it was wrong? I don't think so. I think he literally thought he was saving his family. Remember, he said to save.
Right.
He called it an assignment. So for him, this is saving them from going to hell.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, at least he's telling himself that. So he said in an interview that, he knew it was wrong, even when he was doing it later. But he explained that after making the decision to kill them, there was no turning back. It's just like D-Day. You go in. There's no stopping after you start. Yeah. So it appears that he had planned this for a while. So listen to this. So if we ever have this conversation, I'm definitely going to look at y'all a little bit different.
You don't have to worry about me. You two have the conversations.
Right.
One night after dinner, he asked his family what they wanted done with their bodies after they died. Now, in the context of family life, not even having a grid for your dad going to kill you, it would just seem like a normal conversation.
Not to me.
Well, I mean, I would want my body cremated, just so y'all know.
He has asked me what he wanted me to do.
Thinking of cremation as well.
Yeah.
For sure, but
now I think it would be a little weird to ask your kids though.
Right.
They're teenagers. They're not even thinking about death. In fact, most teenagers think that they're invincible. So that's kind of strange.
They probably didn't think it. They just thought, he's weird.
Maybe. Yeah. Cause he was probably very awkward with his kids too. Like I can picture him just kind of patting them every once in a while and probably not a lot of emotional attachment or connection.
And besides, who would even think, oh, he's going to kill me?
Right. There's just no grid for it. That's what's crazy when you look back at like the wedding photos and the family photos. It's like these people had no idea that their husband or their father was going to murder them. You know what I mean? So he said, I remember talking about funerals and creations and burials. I thought I was being really clever. So this tells me it wasn't just financial and religious either. He, like any dysfunctional psychopath, wanted to kill, and he had no empathy at all for what he did.
You can tell he took a nap. He had lunch,
made
phone calls,
mm-hmm.
no tears at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And eating lunch in between.
Yeah.
What task did he do that made you think that? Calling funeral?
The first thing is, shooting his family in the back of the head.
Oh, you just read something and then said that points to me.
Oh, that it wasn't just financial or religious. I think he wanted to kill his family. Uh-huh. And we'll get into more of that in a little bit, but yeah. So after they discover the bodies, the FBI, so now the FBI is involved. And they found his car parked at Kennedy International Airport in New York City. After that, the trail went cold. Now, fast forward May 21st, 1989. So I was 16 at the time. And it was America's Most Wanted, not Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted. And they were doing the episode on John List. And this is what got me hooked right off the bat. And so they showed this bust. And this is just fascinating to me.
The age demon and busts weren't used back then like they are now.
Right. And so this is a guy. So obviously from the pictures in the background, they had something. You could tell he's like wearing a suit. So it does look like either a church photo or maybe a business photo. And so this guy, he basically, his name is Bender, Frank Bender, and he's a forensic artist, and he was hired to do an aged John List. And he talked about how he thought an aged List would look like. He gave him a hawk nose, grizzled eyebrows. I mean, I don't know what's up with old men and their eyebrows, but that definitely happens. And then he went ahead and put the horned rimmed glasses on him. And the reason he did that is it was a theory of various psychologists that List would keep wearing those glasses because it would remind him of more successful days.
So that's a good point.
22 million people saw it, and the tips started coming in. So this is the bust right here. And this is John List when they got him in trial. Look at that. That is incredible. It looks like the only thing is maybe in the bust, he aged him a little bit more than he actually looked. But other than that, I mean, down to the hair and everything, he looks just like him.
Incredible. He does. And the glasses.
Yeah. They're like, I mean, almost identical. So that is amazing to me. And it worked. So one tip came from a lady in Richmond, Virginia, and she thought her next door neighbor looked strikingly similar. Not only that, but her neighbor was also an accountant and a churchgoer.
Oh, you think he would have changed professions?
Huh?
You think he would have changed professions?
No.
But criminals go to what they know.
Well, especially a person of his makeup. You know, he's not going to want to try new things. He's going to go to exactly what he's good at, because this is all about ego for him. And so he definitely doesn't want to try to do something new that's outside of his normal. But he did try. He worked at a few other businesses. Now, they went to Robert Clark's home and they spoke to his wife.
Oh,
yeah, he remarried.
Yeah. And that ended the 18-year hunt for List. He was arrested 9 days after the show aired on June 1st. Okay, so this is, to me, crazy because, like you said, he just went straight back to what he knew, except he didn't have any kids this time. And they found out that after he annihilated his entire family, he drove to the airport and parked his car, but he didn't take a plane. He then traveled to Denver, Colorado, and he began his new life as Robert Clark. He got a job first as a hotel fry cook, and then later as an accountant for H&R Block.
Oh my.
He joined the local Lutheran church, and he married Dolores Miller, another widow, in 1985, and then they both moved to Richmond, Virginia.
Wonder why he picked Colorado and then Virginia.
I'm not sure. Now, here's what's crazy. List caught the tail end of this show with his wife.
Oh, no.
And he later said, I was perspiring like anything, but his wife did not connect her husband to the family Annihilator being highlighted on America's Most Wanted.
It looked just like him.
But the neighbor did.
Why wouldn't the wife?
Here's the thing again. She's got a connection to this man. She's been married to him since 1985. It's just not going to enter her head that he is this man on TV unless he was abusing her. So like you do see where women that are married to someone, they see like, you know, weird behavior or, you know, she met him in church. I mean, that right there would probably, there's no way she could tie him to that. But anyway, if they've been abusive or acted strange, then they'll start kind of connecting the dots. But remember Liz with Ted Bundy, there were just things that were weird that she started connecting the dots to, like Gone at Night, the Plaster of Paris, there were some things that were kind of strange, But even for her, it was just like, there's no way. So if this lady is a widower, she met him, you know, at church, and he's just this accountant that goes to work every day. They work in their garden maybe in the summers and watch TV in the winters. You know what I mean? I could see how she just would not connect the dots.
Neither wife they didn't show was abused.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing with these family annihilators. A lot of times they have overbearing wives, and they will just bottle everything up and then eventually end up, we'll see that with Chris Watts. Okay, so he went on trial. His defense lawyer tried to get the letter that he wrote to his pastor dismissed, because it was like, you know, pastor, parishioner confidentiality. But the prosecutor's like, no, because he abandoned the letter when he left, and he left it out in plain sight.
Oh, smart.
Oh.
Yeah. So he had no thought of confidentiality. If he did, he would have mailed it straight to him. So the judge agreed. The letter was admitted. He was convicted and sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences. He died in prison at the age of 82 of pneumonia. No one collected his remains, I'm sure, because he killed off his entire family. So who was there? And then his widow, or his current wife, had already divorced him. So she's not going to come for him. Now, the
getting divorced.
Oh, yeah.
So the house, ironically, burned down a few months after the murders.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And they're not sure why. They don't know if it was arson. They don't know if maybe it was, you know, they don't know why. It just burned down.
Maybe someone in his area just burned it.
Or maybe
he came back and did it.
And this is him at his trial. What stands out to you in looking at this picture?
Such pride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Look at that, looking down his nose, his head up. I mean, if he thought welfare was bad, I can't imagine what he thought about being on trial for murder.
It's almost boasting proud.
Yeah. And obstinate. Like, I've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And
okay.
He might think he hasn't really.
I don't think he ever did. He never apologized. He knew it was wrong, but I think morally he thought it was right. So he knew it was wrong in society's eyes, but in God's eyes, that's what he had to do to save his family. Mm-hmm. So I want to get into psychology and finish off with what type of annihilator we think he is. So his defense team, they try to put the PTSD defense on because of his, you know, time of World War II and then Korea and all that. But psychologists disagreed. And this is what they said, which I thought was very interesting. They said he was going through a midlife crisis.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe that either.
I don't think it was all of it, but I definitely think it might have been part of it. And it fed into his lie that he had to get rid of his family because he was failing at everything. And at this point, he was in his 40s.
But a midlife crisis is a little different. It's not
for normal people.
Family.
For normal people.
It's more get a girlfriend, get a sports car.
Her and sports cars for men at that age is hilarious.
I hate it.
I'm like, they were just now able to afford it, likely. Anyway.
Well, okay.
I know a lady right now, her husband went through a midlife crisis. And what happened was years and years of not dealing with his, you know, junk, not dealing with things at all, his past, his emotional state. The midlife crisis, when it came, it was like all that stuff not dealt with just piled on top and made what could have been just a normal, hey, you know, am I where I wanted to be at this age? You know, am I accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish? You know, because men being accomplished in their profession, with their families, you know, being a hero, being someone important and significant to their families is very important. And then also the aging, do I still have it? You know, all of those things, like we know Elena still has it, according to her gym experience.
Oh, yes.
I think though that midlife, I just don't believe the midlife crisis.
Well, what I'm saying
for a long time, and he just
oh yeah, I think he definitely, but what I'm saying is at this point, he's a failure. And so it's right at the time where most men look at their lives and he's failing and he's not anywhere where he wanted to be. So the emotional aspect, the hormonal aspect, I think it just exacerbated his thinking processes, and he just killed his family. But he's not normal.
But even before he killed, he could have had a midlife in his 30s and had those emotions.
No, things was going good in his 30s.
Right.
And I mean, the hormone aspect of it, I just think that's responsible for many things, especially when men get to that age too.
And not excusing, of course. I just think that if you're already having those things going on, and then you add this to, was it the one straw that broke the camel's back, you know? So at the time when he murdered them, he was between the ages of 46 and 47. And so that's like prime, you know, midlife crisis. But again, I agree with you. Most people that go through midlife crises do not murder their entire families.
Right, for sure.
Now, in my research, because I was wanting to understand family annihilators, and I found out some interesting things. They've not been studied as much because there's not that many. It is escalating, though. More and more are killing their families. And there's several types they're discovering so far. Self-righteous, anomic, which is the socially unstable and alienated, disappointed, and paranoid. Those are 4 of the types so far. And I think from his letter to his pastor, we can definitely put him in the self-righteous.
Right. I think so.
So self-righteous.
Yeah, self-righteous, anomic or socially unstable and alienated, disappointed, and paranoid.
Okay.
So I think he's actually probably 3. The self-righteous, the anomic, and the disappointed in life.
Yeah.
And I came across this YouTube video by a Dr. Grande. He actually analyzed John List in a case. And he's a licensed mental health counselor, and he discussed what's called an OCPD killer. So an OCPD is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Now, it's not OCD, okay? So this is a little bit different, but he defined it as an anxious, fearful disorder. And here's the thing. People who are anxious or fearful, they have to control. When they feel like they're losing control, then they have intense anger or rage. So a lot of times when people get angry, it's actually a loss of control they're feeling for whatever reason. So
did he analyze him in person or just the notes of the case?
Just in the notes of the case. And then he also is OCPD is an avoidant and dependent personality disorder cluster C, which I'll get to that in a second. And then perfectionism, rigidity, negative affectivity. In other words, he doesn't have that emotional state where he connects with others very well. Interpersonal aggression, and then the need to control other people.
Interpersonal what?
So like with his relationships, it's building up this aggression on the inside because of his relationships with those around him.
And his desire to control, I mean, that was apparent when he's killing his family for his reasons.
Right, because he didn't want his daughter to be an actress.
Right.
I mean, that's obsessed control. And I looked up negative affectivity just to get a little bit of a better definition on Wikipedia. And it's a personality variable that involves the experience of negative emotions and poor self-concept. It subsumes a variety of negative emotions, including anger, contempt, disgust, guilt, fear, and nervousness. So I think his family was a reflection to him of his own hatred for himself.
You do?
Mm-hmm. Because the negative affectivity is centered in how he sees himself. He's angry at himself. He has contempt and disgust for himself. And I know it sounds weird, but a lot of people I've met that are like him to a degree, obviously they don't kill people, their criticism of others, their need to control others is actually a way to cope with their own critical view of themselves. In other words, I'm not as bad as these people.
See, I don't think that. I think he thought he was smarter, more prideful.
Well, yeah, of course he thought he was smarter, more prideful.
His hate was towards the family. I don't think he hated himself at all.
I think he did.
Yeah,
I've met a lot of C personalities, and they really do have a lot. They're very critical of themselves, but they don't like to deal with that aspect. They don't like to dig around in that aspect. So they will constantly blame other people. They will be critical of other people. They will feel aggression toward other people internally if they can't control them. So I don't know. I think he was.
In the interviews, there's not really anything that shows, I mean, to me, that he hated himself at all. He just thought he was superior. I mean, he was.
Well, you can't confuse feeling superior with hating yourself.
No, I know, but I don't see anything in his case that I've read that any comment he's ever made that was negative towards himself.
Yeah, they usually don't.
Well,
in this disorder. And then the cluster C personalities are plagued with intense anxiety and fear. Intense. So then he listed 8 symptom criteria for the disorder. So tell me if you think any of this fits him. A preoccupation with details, orders, lists, rules, organizations, and schedules. A perfectionism that interferes with task completion, except murdering his family.
Yes.
Excessive devotion to work and productivity to the exclusion of friendships. Over conscientiousness and scrupulous and inflexible about matters of morality, ethics, or values. Can't throw out worn out objects. Can't delegate tasks because they want things done the exact way. Has a miserly spending style towards self and others, and is rigid and stubborn.
All of them.
Yeah, and I don't know about him not being able to throw out things. And then another thing where it says miserly spending style, more than likely he was miserly because number one, he's an accountant. He worked for a bank, and I've met a lot of bank people, and they are. But that leads me to the question, then why were they living in a mansion? So
I'm curious as how he got the money for that and why they ended up there. I can't find it.
Did his mom and wife pressure him to live there?
I don't think so. I think it was his pride. And the only term I could use is like showboating. Because he wanted to give a persona of a successful person.
Yeah.
And when he lost his success, that kind of turned him the other way.
Possibly. I know when we look at Chris Watts, the finances were a factor. And you often see in these cases where the wife wants this real nice house and provide an extremely good life for the kids. And then the husband that's working for a living, that's this type of person, the pressure of trying to keep up with that is one of the factors that adds to the anger.
But here's my thing in comparing those two, and why I feel like his is different, is that he was, very boastful, and like his demeanor was proud, and I don't know how else to say it. But then when you see Chris Watts interviews, he's more like not shameful, but almost meek, I guess.
Well, and I don't see any boasting with John. I see him stating facts.
The pictures you showed,
that's pride, but not necessarily boasting about accomplishments or anything.
But it's not either.
Yeah, I couldn't find in any of his interview when I read the transcript with Chung, I can't remember her first name, of him boasting about any of his accomplishments, but he definitely was morally superior in his views compared to his family. And if he was like that with his family, I'm wondering if he was like that with coworkers.
Yeah.
There's no telling.
You can also boast with actions. You don't have to say anything. So he had the mansion.
But
that was it.
It was from the wife's.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because like his clothes were very conservative. His car was conservative. Yeah. He just seemed like an unassuming, nerdy accountant.
Invisible.
Yeah. Just, Now, Dr. Grand went on to say that Liz was angry and hostile, which in studying family annihilators, that's usually there. That's definitely how they are. Some hide it better than others. They suppress it until finally they calmly and methodically execute their plan to kill their wives and children. He also said that with this disorder, they can appear productive and motivated, but are often not due to perfectionism. They're good at getting jobs, but not keeping them. So I think that's what was happening. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how long he had the job at the bank before he lost it, but it wouldn't surprise me if some of these things were starting to come out, especially if he had stress with his wife, with syphilis and all that. You know, I'm sure he started breaking down. Did he start dissolving and his work suffered? And then his wife drinking, if he felt that morally superior, her drinking was a big problem, I'm sure. Right. Then Ellen wasn't going to church. He was afraid she'd hurt the children. So it appears that her seeming lack of spirituality would hurt the children. And he wanted to do the crime originally on November 1st because it was All Saints Day.
Oh, my word.
You know, too, Ellen said she was pregnant before they got married. And so he didn't want to marry her, but he ended up marrying her. And then she said she wasn't pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah.
He already had Brenda. Ooh. So
well, that's what I'm reading here. It says, yeah, that he didn't want to get married. He wanted to be pure, but Ellen announced she was pregnant and he had reservations, but he went through the wedding.
So how can he be pure if he's already having sex with her?
I know, right?
Well, he wanted to be.
Wanted to be, probably. I didn't know that at all. I'd never read.
So already in his mind, she is a hoe.
Painted.
Mm-hmm.
You had the syphilis, the drinking.
Sort of trapped him. Back then, you know, you got married.
Very interesting. So it's obviously a loveless.
But then there was no baby.
And then she lied about everything, the syphilis, the baby. Ooh.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that about them before.
Me neither. Well, and he would have killed Helen's mother too. She was due for a visit, but she wasn't able to make it because she got sick.
Wow.
Lucky for her.
Then OCPD is characterized by a lack of insight or finding solutions. The doctor said that the murders were probably a mathematical calculation, and that syphilis would have been particularly offensive to him because OPCD and OCD persons are disgusted by germs. So to finish up, Connie Chung. It was Connie Chung. She interviewed him on February 20th, 2002. Listen to a couple things he said. He was waiting to be reunited with him in the hereafter. He said, I feel when we get to heaven, we don't worry about these earthly things. They'll either have forgiven me or won't realize, you know, what happened.
He said what?
They'll either forgive him or they won't realize what happened.
Because these are just earthly things, you know, like killing your family. It's an earthly matter.
Right.
He went on to say, I'm sure that if we recognize each other, that we'll like each other's company, just as we did here when times were better.
Wow.
So then Connie obviously pointed out they broke one of the commandments, you know, you should not murder. And she said, why didn't he just kill himself? And he said, well, it was my belief that if you kill yourself, you won't go to heaven. So eventually I got to the point where I felt that I could kill them. Hopefully they would go to heaven, and then maybe I would have a chance to later confess my sins to God and get forgiveness.
Right. I was about to say that was probably what he was thinking. Do it now and ask forgiveness later.
A lot of people think that way. I've heard him say it before. Mm-hmm.
And then he felt that the 1970s were a sinful time, and that his family were beginning to be influenced by temptation, especially his daughter, who wanted to be an actress, which was sinful to him. He considered acting as being corrupt and linked to Satan. Now, I mean, there are some pretty disgusting things that happen in Hollywood, so that, you know, there might have been reasons for him to worry about her, but not to kill. He decided that killing them before they could renounce their religion would save them from hell and send them straight to heaven.
Boy.
So I think, you know, he killed his family. He wrote these ideas to his pastor to make himself look better, like the hero, and to rationalize him killing his children. I mean, the youngest one, I can't remember his age, but it was, you know, ridiculous. And he had convinced himself that it wasn't as sinful as it was. Now, a Dr. Stephen Simring examined Lish years after his arrest, and said that his sense of neatness was a result of a compulsive personality. That list, get this, showed no evidence of anything that approached genuine remorse, and that he was a cold, cold man.
Yeah, none of his interviews he ever apologized or anything.
Yeah.
It's interesting there wasn't any signs with the second wife. Surely he didn't keep the job for 15 or 18 years. You know what I mean?
Know.
I mean, he's a serial killer. They usually
not technically. A serial killer isn't by how many people they kill. It's by them killing in a series over a period of time. So just the fact that he killed his entire family doesn't make him a serial killer. But I don't, yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, did he work at H&R Block that entire time, maybe?
Yeah, surely he would have broke again. Once you kill, you usually can't just stop.
Or he got his fresh start that he thought that he could. He made it work.
Right. And they didn't have any more kids, so he didn't have to worry about that.
But his mindset would be the same.
It would be. It sure would. And then I wonder, did he find killing distasteful? Like it was a task he had to do, but it was distasteful. And maybe some of the emotion, even disgust, or maybe it was unpleasant, cleaning up the blood, all that. Maybe he just never wanted to do it again.
Yeah. Not the emotion part of it, but I could see cleaning up. And
well, even though he had no empathy for them, they can still feel emotion. And so I don't think he felt any remorse, but maybe disgust with, having to mess with all that, and just the stress of having to hide it, and,
right.
Fear of getting caught. So as late as 2008, a parent told a reporter in New Jersey that children wouldn't even walk past the property, and some didn't even want to live on the same street. Like most horrific crimes of this nature, the trauma isn't just the victims or the families. The entire town, village, or city is traumatized and haunted, and some for decades.
In the first house where it was murder, or the second where he lived?
Where the murders occurred.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't want to either. Would you? I wouldn't. Bad mojo.
Right.
No.
It's a house.
It's bad.
I don't know. No,
not that house where the murders occurred, but if I wanted a house on that same road, I'd be like, it's a house. It serves its purpose. Yeah.
I'd probably be like, that's where Liz murdered people.
I could see y'all going.
Give tours.
There are people that do, well, you told us that do Jack the Ripper tours in England.
Yeah, I went on it.
Mm-hmm.
And Amityville, they used to let you go in the house. They don't do it anymore, but they used to give a little.
That's our next case.
That was an interesting one.
It is. So what I'm going to do, do y'all have any other thoughts though about John List?
I don't.
Were there any interviews with the mother-in-law? I'm wondering what
Good question. I don't know.
Well, the wife, the second wife.
Oh, well, she divorced him.
But still.
Yeah, I'm wondering what she thought.
She write a book? Did she have an interview?
Those are good questions. You ought to write them down, and I can check them out, or send me a text.
Definitely would write a book.
Yes, I could see that.
Mm-hmm. You would write a book?
Sure would.
What would your title be?
Give me some time to
Jilted.
Just so other people could know how he was and what to watch for him. Things you didn't know, and the monster. No, there's a book called Monster.
Monster number 2.
So let's say that
what it would be My List.
But it's not your list.
My List. But his last name, it'd be her husband. My List. Got it? You get it? My List.
Well, I get it, but I'd be confused. Like, do you have a list of people you want to kill?
No, My List. Because my husband.
And just list. Like this.
Yeah, sort of downward.
Right.
My List.
We got it.
That's an excellent title.
It's your dream, Mom.
Well, what would you title it? What would you title it?
Jilted.
My life with a douchebag is probably what I would call it.
Well,
yes,
you that's not jilted. A good title. No, mine's much better.
I know what I would title it. You ready? Well, Dear John. Bam, bam, mic drop, mic drop. Where are you going?
She's got a potty.